He's a former national championship winning football coach. She's a world-renowned clinical and forensic neuropsychologist and relationship expert. Together, they make an unbeatable team. It's now time for the Sports Love Life Show. Let's join Jamie King and Dr. Judy Ho.
And welcome everybody to another edition of Sports Love and Life. And we could not be more excited than to have with us, talk about acting royalty, the talent under this household, unbelievable. We've got Michael O'Keefe and of course his beautiful wife, Emily Donahoe. And I told Emily my mom's name was Donahoe, so there might be something there. So maybe when you win your Academy Award, I'll get an invite or something, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
I'm there. Well, let me ask you this. In a house like yours with acting and writing, and Michael's a lyricist, you guys have done so much. Is it hard in terms of the competitiveness because you guys both do great things together? Is that push each other in terms of the drive within the house? Who is more driven?
Not at all, Jimmy. You know, mainly for me, it's just been an easy way of being all these 10 years we've been together.
Such a ham.
You know,
no competitive nature whatsoever. That's good. That's good.
Not at all, as you can see. You know, Emily and I are really supportive of each other. And one of the really amazing things that happened during the quarantine, which, you know, of course, was a very serious issue for everybody. And we're not trying to minimize the pandemic or the effect it had on people in the quarantine, but there were lots of little ancillary benefits for us as a family and as a couple. And one of the, I think, most extraordinary things was watching Emily organize her writing and put together as many screenplays as she did, including producing and getting the whole film shot when we were in quarantine, of the script that you know about that she wrote, Draw Up and Stare. So, you know, I was nothing but impressed with her and with her capacities as a writer and producer. It was the first time we'd ever worked together.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I would actually say that we're not competitive at all. I don't think that that's our vibe at all. I think we're really collaborative and we're kind of have a team mentality, you know, especially now that we have a kid in the picture who's 8. So we're very much, you know, we have to be a team, I think, or the whole thing falls apart, you know.
Well, my co-host, Dr. Judy Ho, sends her warm regards. She couldn't be here. She's on assignment. But one of the things she always talks about is communication within relationships. And you two have so much going on as far as your acting and writing and so forth, and parents as well. How do you manage to do everything as well as you want to? Of course, you have to make your living, you know, then you have your son. How do you manage all of that?
I think a lot of it's just about coming from a place of love for each other and love for our son. And if you start there, everything else tends to just fall into place. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the thing too that's always so miraculous to me about Michael is like, even watching his work now, even having been married for 10 years, you know, I still watch him as an actor and awestruck by what he does, you know, and I'm like, that's not him. You know, he's got this transformational thing that gets me really excited still when I watch him work, you know, so I still get so much inspiration from him, like legitimately, like it's so much artistic inspiration. And that really makes up for the fact that I get so little personal inspiration from him. So
yeah, I see what you mean.
Morally, I get so little.
Yeah.
Right.
No, truly. I mean, Michael inspires me. He continues to inspire me.
Oh, it's too late now.
And...
You can't dig yourself out of that hole.
But you know,
Okay, so I got to
yeah.
know the love. I got to know the love story, the backstory. 10 years. Was it one of those love at first sight? Did it take time? Who was the instigator?
I'll tell my version, and then we'll see if Emily wants to amend as we go along, or she can just rewrite it and make it better.
You know, when Michael tells his version, okay, you go ahead.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much. So when Emily and I met, she was doing a play called In the Wake at the Kirk Douglas Theater in Los Angeles. with some friends of mine, a really, really good actor named Carson Elrod, who I'd worked with on Broadway in Reckless, and another actor, Danielle Skrostad, who I'd worked with on Michael Clayton, the movie I did with George, what's his name?
Clooney.
George Clooney.
Yeah, I've heard of that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, George Clooney. George Clooney. Couldn't resist. George, if you're listening, man, I'm sorry I forgot your name. And then Danielle and I were actually having a kind of casual fling. So when she got to LA, she gave me the booty call, and I started going over to the theater and seeing the play. And Emily was in the play. She was Danielle's dressing room mate, and she was engaged to be married. So when I met her, you know, I of course thought she was a great actor, but at the same time I was like, well, you know, she's over there in the I'm engaged section of the party, and I'm over here in the I'm seeing your dressing room mate side of the party. So we never really looked at each other, or thought of each other that so much that way. But then several months later, her engagement was off, and I was in Barcelona making a movie. And I got an email from Emily saying, you know, I'm not far from you. Do you want to have dinner? And I was like, well, claro, como que no. And she came. She came
So
over.
it was Emily pursuing then through you. Okay. That's his story.
I
That's
agree
his
with
story.
that.
Yeah,
Actually,
Okay.
She made the first move.
yeah, absolutely true. That is absolutely true. So I would,
But the rest
yeah,
is
the rest
bullshit.
of it's total bullshit.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
no, it's exactly no, that's exactly right. You know, we met as friends, and my good friend Danielle Skrostad introduced us, and they were having a fling. And Danielle's still a very dear friend to us, and she was at our wedding. And,
Yeah, Danielle was at our wedding.
And you know, yeah, it's totally true. I was in Europe, and I was like, "Who's here?" And then I saw that he was there, and I was like, "You know what? I'm going to ask him out. I'm going to straight up ask him out." Had no idea that it would lead to what it did, which is amazing. And then I would say after we connected in Barcelona, I would say in that kind of reunion, it would be kind of along the lines of a love at first sight, love at second sight.
Yeah, because
How would you say it?
we met initially in February of that year, and then it was August of that year that we actually got together. And we really did fall in love essentially over that weekend. Of course, we hadn't said anything yet, but Emily had gone back to Paris because she's a fabulous person and she was staying in Paris. And I was about to wrap up this film in Barcelona, and I said, listen, why don't you wait for me? So she got us a room at this really swinging hotel called La Louisiane, which is sort of the rock and roll hotel to Paris, the same way the Tropicana Motel used to be for Los Angeles back in the day. And it overlooked this really cool corner where there was a boulangerie across the street. And it had one of these wide windows with a teeny balcony you could kind of step out on. And it was right off Boulevard Saint-Germain-des-Prés. And, you know, we kind of hung out in Paris for a week. And then we had a moment I'm getting all kind of mushy remembering this.
Yeah.
We had this really amazing moment. We went to Sacré-Cœur, which was this incredible cathedral in the Montmartre section of Paris. And we were just kind of going there because it's something to see and it's cool. And we sat down and something happened between us, and we had this shared moment and this look. And when we walked outside, we looked down the hill from Sacré-Cœur, which looks down onto the city of Paris, especially the old part of the city. And it was as if we had a kind of shared altered state, because everything had that kind of changed look that can happen to you sometimes when you fall in love, where there's a slight sheen to everything. And it really had a kind of, I guess altered state is the best thing I can describe it as. And we never looked back after that. That was it.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's
was
is that your
powerful.
version too? Pretty
Absolutely.
much the same thing happened at the same time. Wow.
Yeah. Thunderstruck, you know. Yeah.
The Sports Love Life Show is brought to you by Dr. Paul Ross and his Amazing Foot Cream. Amazing doctor, amazing cream. Give your feet the very best with Dr. Ross's Amazing Foot Cream.
What do you admire most about Emily, and Emily back about Michael in terms of your admiration? What do you admire the most about each other?
Well, aside from Emily's lack of discerning taste in men, I really think I really think she's a special person.
Okay.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna have a hard time with this one.
Okay, my turn. My turn. It's so easy for me to answer this. I think that Michael just fascinates me. You know, I mean, I think that he has such a big heart. He's such a kind person. And he is a seeker in a way that's meaningful to me, you know. I think he is asking the hard questions in his life, and he lives trying to find answers for him that are meaningful and honest and authentic. And the resonance that has through our family life is also incredibly meaningful to me. And I can hear the joke coming based on what I'm about to say, but like the truth of the matter is I look up to Michael still, you know, like which is funny because in a day-to-day way we're such buddies and lovers and all that kind of stuff, but I do admire him. You know, his character I think is pretty amazing, which is not to say that either of us are perfect, but the way Michael works with the material of his life is really, really meaningful to me. And he's kind, and he's a softie, which cracks me up because he seems like not always such a softie, but I feel like I have his number and know that he is.
You guys seem like at the core it's just an incredible friendship as well, as far as you're drawn to each other so much, and the laughs, and it seems like you have such a great time together, whether it be working together or just like say at home. And that friendship, is that one of your centerpieces of your relationship?
I think so, you know, and to piggyback on what Emily said, the thing I really do, this number of things I admire her for is her kind of self-made persona. You know, she's articulate, intelligent, gifted, sophisticated, and that was a kind of journey for her from childhood, from, you know, a kind of not quite, I wouldn't say rural Louisiana, but certainly not, you know, I mean, LP and Monroe are some of the most adversely affected cities in Louisiana, and therefore in the country in terms of their economic status, the living conditions there. You came out of a really, you know, financially depressed area.
Yeah, that's true.
And Emily had a kind of resiliency and found her way, you know, through Vassar College and then through a graduate degree at UCSD, and then a career as an actor and as a writer now. And so there was a kind of way in which that really impressed me, because that's a very difficult thing to do. We, you know, you see us now as we are, but the journey to get here is a big part of who we are. And when I started to appreciate that part of Emily was when I really started to clue into some of the aspects about her that I really respected and loved.
Emily, 10 years ago, when you first started dating, had you seen Caddyshack? Did you know he was part of Caddyshack? When did that come about? And do you have any story about that?
Okay, so it's so funny to like have that question like put so directly, because I actually don't think anybody's ever just straight ahead asked me that. And the truth of the matter, no,
Sports Love and Life show. There we go.
No, I'm happy to answer it because I don't even know if Michael knows this, but like when I first met Michael, I did not recognize him.
Really?
When we met in the lobby of a theater, and I thought he was hot. But I did not recognize him, which is true. And I was like, who is that? Who's that guy? He's really cute, that kind of a thing. But hold on, stop. So then I, once I kind of clocked who Michael was, I knew him instantly from like Michael Clayton and things like that. But Caddyshack, no. And I have to tell you, I am so outside the world of golf in every way.
Wow. Okay.
That when I was on a game show called Cash Cab, okay, I lost the final question. It was a video double or nothing, and we were going to win. And the final question was, what do you call a do-over in golf? And I had no idea. I was like, a birdie? I mean, no clue, right? So Caddyshack, I only tell you that story to prove just how far outside the realm of Caddyshack I was. And then I watched it recently and fairly recently, and I loved it. You know, all the men in my family had watched it. Everybody had watched it but me. And it delights me. You know, it's such a joyful, amazing movie. It's right up my alley. And also our son looks so like Michael. So that's a really kind of special place to be in, to see, you know, Michael, our son is now closer to Michael's age when he shot that movie, right? So so no, I didn't know Caddyshack, but now that I've seen it, I'm all in. I get what the fuss is about, you know, and it's thrilling. It's thrilling that, you know, he got to be part of such a joyful thing.
It's seen, I think, every minute of the day, probably in some corner of the world. It's seen all the time. One of those ones you can always flip on and catch it. To me, one of the great comedies, and many millions of others of all time. When you look at that and your performance in that, and I heard you say recently when somebody said, hey, do you mind being labeled as Danny Noonan? And that's just one of the many things you've done in your acting career. And you said you kind of became more used to now, as far as something you wear with a badge of honor. You heard that I think it was somebody that was in hospice or somebody not doing well, and she said her father watched that and their family got joy from that. And I just want to tell you right now, what an iconic role for you, but the amount of laughs and smiles you've given so many millions of people every day that watch it, man, I think you should wear that with pride every day. It's such a blessing.
I agree.
Show is brought to you by The Nerve Company. Never underestimate radical vision. It takes nervy to be a company this great.
Well,
I agree.
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, thank you, Emily.
It's true. I think it's incredible.
We need more laughter, guys. We need more laughter, and that does it every day.
Well, you know, I had told this story a number of times, but I'll tell it briefly again. There was a woman who was the wardrobe designer on a show I did. And when I came in for my fitting, she said, hey, you know, I'm a big Caddyshack fan. It was almost the first thing she said. And she kind of read me. And I was like, yeah, thanks. You know, and then we did the fitting. And afterwards, she said to me, do you mind if I tell you why I said that about Caddyshack? And by saying she read me, she read that, you know, 30 years after the fact. Every once in a while, you think, maybe, I don't know, maybe I want to get recognized for some work I did, say, in the 21st century. Say work, you know, within the last decade or the last 20 years, you know, that Caddyshack's a big thing for people. And so, like, you know, I was sort of walking around with this, I wouldn't say chip on my shoulder, but I had a kind of, I don't know, thing about it. And when she said that, and then she said, you know, my dad just died, and the only thing that kind of got us through it as a family was we sat in the hospital and watched Caddyshack while he was she said, like, almost every day for about the 6 weeks before he passed. And, you know, at that point, everything in me shifted, and I realized that the film is held in a very special place for the American film going audience, that it's, like you said, provides this sort of uplifting, crazy vibe that everybody kind of glommed onto. And really it was a cult success, because initially, if you go back and look at some of the early reviews, like Gene Shalit, who was an NBC film critic at the time, he hated it, you know, and the film really didn't do well, you know. And, you know, I forgave Gene for that, Emily. I did. I forgave him. I think it only took me 10 or 15 years to forgive Gene for that. But, you know, you know, the film just accrued this audience. And, you know, last year I had this crazy opportunity to caddy at the US Open.
Yep.
Partly because it was being held at Wingfoot.
Right.
And that is where I caddied as a teenager. And it's also where I trained as a golf student, so that when I got down to Florida to make the film, I could at least look like I had a decent golf swing, because I'm not a very good golfer, and I really never was. And of course, you know, I lied at the audition and told them I was a scratch golfer.
Right.
So
What's a scratch golf?
Yeah.
Scratch is good.
So Emily, you don't golf much,
yeah, scratch is good. Scratch is a reference to the handicap.
Okay.
And if you have a 0 handicap, or there's actually good golfers who have to give strokes back See, like if
So
I'm
that's
going,
like what I would be like if I was playing.
yeah, you'd be like a +6 or a +7.
Right,
You'd be
right,
giving
right.
back those 6 or 7 strokes
I'm with you now.
rather than taking the 18 or 42 that I would have to take in my handicap. And you know, when I did it, all of these golfers on the tour, you know, they everybody came over and said hi. I did so many different interviews. I was on ESPN, one of the sports shows, and you know, on Sports Center, and there was a kind of like callback thing to the film that I think was important. Of course, was I think also significant that it was in the middle of the quarantine.
Right.
You know, it was in the middle of July, and people had really suffered. And man, people wanted to step out and have some fun. You know, there was like, is there any fun to be had in this world? And then all of a sudden, there we were. You know, and I was carrying this bag on national television, and it was hilarious. And I will tell you now, since it's a year later, first of all, I would do it again in a heartbeat. Okay. So if there's any pro golfers out there, and it doesn't have to be the US Open, although I do prefer the majors, Jamie.
The majors.
Okay. Yeah, I do prefer the majors.
Okay, I'll work on that.
But if there's any pro golfer out there listening, I'm happy to come and caddy because I had so much fun doing it. But I got to tell you, I developed a more profound respect for the job of the caddy because we started at the 10th hole on Wingfoot on the back 9, and it's a par 3, and there's a steep hill right off the tee before you get to the green. And I had taken about 5 steps with that bag on my shoulder, and I thought, this is the worst idea I have ever had, and I'm just getting started. And I had to go for the, you know, for the 18 after that. So as I said to my golfer, Danny Balin, the next day, he called to check in on me in the morning. He said, how do you feel? I said, well, I don't think there's one part of my body that isn't sore except my teeth, but otherwise, you know, I'm fine.
Yeah, people realize those caddies have to walk 4 days and more. They walk out and check yardages. I mean, they've got a lot of work in carrying that bag. That's not easy. They make it look easy, but it's not.
Yeah. No, it's not one of those canvas bags that Judge Smales had. I can say that.
Judge Smales. So Emily, in watching Caddyshack, was there one scene that jumped out at you, one of your favorites? Is there one that you like more than others, or?
Well, I also would say 2. So the one that I love that Michael's in the most is the scene with Chevy. Do you do drugs, Danny, every day? You know, yeah, love that scene. But the scene I think that like lights me up the most when I watched it was the pool scene, the dancing in the pool, and I mean, it's just so, yeah. So I would say those 2. You know, Michael's so funny, and it always just blows me away too. You know that he did that movie right after The Great Santini, right? Like, was that the one that you did right after? And so the first time I saw The Great Santini, that really was a totally different reaction, seeing a totally, you know, Michael was working obviously from a really different place, and there's so much, it's such a deep performance. There's so much pain in that performance, you know, and that he can go from there to Danny Noonan, you know, with the ease, you know, always just kind of blew me away. So, I think in my mind, I think like Caddyshack was his reward for like the depths of hell that he plunged to for the great scene, you know?
Well, we talked, Michael, before about the fact that you had 2 love scenes. I mean, 2 women in there in Caddyshack, and you talked about that. I'm sorry. On the ESPN show, we talked about that on the radio side. So you had that going on. What was your favorite scene? Was there one? I know there's so many that were happening. What would be your favorite?
You know, I can't say I have a favorite, but what I can say is that so many things happened for me because of Caddyshack, and so many important relationships got started because of the film. And you know, the primary thing was working with Doug Kenny, you know, who as you know died the year after we made the movie.
Yeah.
And you know, Doug, for those of your listeners who don't know, was really one of the great comic geniuses of the 20th century, you know, comparable to Groucho Marx, Ian Frazier, you know, some of the great writers of his generation and any generation prior. He'd started National Lampoon magazine after coming out of Harvard and being on the Harvard Lampoon being on Harvard Lampoon at Harvard. He also wrote Animal House, produced it, and then played, of course, the famous character, the Stork. And his life was really cut short, and it was unfortunate, you know, because he was addicted addicted to cocaine. And back in the 70s, you know, we didn't have the same awareness of the drug culture that we are now aware of now. And we lost a lot of really talented, really smart people because we were naive about what that kind of thing could do to us, and
Right.
and what kind of rabbit hole you could fall down. But you know, Doug was really kind of like one of the big brother figures in my life I never had. He was not quite, I think probably just 10 years older than me, maybe 11 years older than me when we made the film. And I had really won him over in the audition process. And he was one of the most affable, intelligent, likable guys. In fact, there's a great movie now on Netflix that's essentially about his life, and it's called A Futile and Stupid Gesture, which is a line that he wrote in Caddyshack for in Animal House, for the Tim Matheson character. And Will Forte plays Doug at the age he was when we made the film. And Martin Mull plays him older as if he had lived. And it's really a great glimpse into the kind of zany and radical comedy that Doug kind of was at the forefront of in American culture. And if you really want to appreciate him a little bit better, you can watch that movie and then also go back and look at the book of the same title, which was published probably a year or two before. So, you know, he was an incredible influence for me, you know. And then the other thing is, I got to really be there at the start of Bill Murray's career. And Chevy had really only done maybe two or three. I know he had done Foul Play before then, but it was all just starting to happen for him. And Ted Knight was a legend for me because I grew up watching the Mary Tyler Moore Show and knowing who he was, and also remembering him from Twilight Zone. And then Rodney, I had seen a million times because Rodney was my dad's favorite comedian. So anytime Rodney was on Ed Sullivan or something like that, we were going to turn it on and check him out. So the fact that I got to be in the room with those guys, that I was part of something they were creating, you know, it's, you know, looking back on it, I don't think I really truly appreciated it at the time. And now that I can look back, you know, from this, these many years later, I can tell you, you know, they were legends, and I was fortunate just to be there and kind of grab onto their coattails and go for the ride.
The Sports Love Life Show is brought to you by Snow and their outstanding teeth whitening systems. Go to trysnow.com. Jamie and Dr. Judy love their snow kits, and so will you.
I mean, when you look at your career, the one thing is Emily talked about earlier, being awestruck watching you sometimes. I'm the same way. I watch you in these movies, and I see you in Homeland and the things you do. Danny Noonan is just a part of what you've done. These other roles, you steal scenes when you walk in. You've got so much talent. When you look at your body of work, and you've been with Jack Nicholson, that George Clooney guy, I think, yeah, that was his name. George Clooney, Tommy Lee Jones, some of these iconic actors, and you go in there, you hold your own. You have such a presence on screen. You can't train that. It's just something that, I guess, through years of work and experience, you just are so calm and cool and collected. You make it look so easy. I know it's not for both of you. How do you handle that aspect?
Well, you know, I got trained really young, and I'm convinced that the way, one of the ways good or great acting happens is that you become very clear about everything that happened before the moment of the scene, and you become very clear about everything that's coming after the moment of the scene, so that you're so aware of the character's journey that when you get to that actual moment, you can kind of just let go and get into the flow of it. But also, I've been fortunate. I mean, when you listed some of the people I work with, I've been really, really fortunate. You know, before we started recording, you mentioned this movie on Netflix that I'm in right now, Things Heard and Seen. You know, Amanda Seyfried is one of the most gifted young actors of her generation.
Yes.
Great movie.
Yes.
Yeah. And James Norton is no slouch either. You know, he's doing an American accent, you know, and I don't
He's
probably
a slouch.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, you're an incredible slouch, Jamie, though. Don't let anybody tell you differently. You know, and so I've got, you know, this thing I just did with Kevin Bacon on City on a Hill. I got to work with Kevin and Aldous Hodge, who is just incredible.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at like One Night in Miami, he's the actor who plays Jim Brown in it. He's got so much presence and power and smarts. People don't know he's a trained violinist, and he also has this kind of like side career as an artist where he makes these bespoke hand watches, wrist watches that are incredibly ornate and difficult to design. And while we were doing the scene together, he opened up this huge sketchbook and he was designing watches, just sort of casually chatting while we were off camera, right?
He's otherworldly.
Yeah, he's just, so
he's a genius.
yeah,
Don't you think?
totally. Yeah. So I've had these opportunities come my way, and frankly, you know, I don't know how much I really had to do with it, except that I try to show up and I try to be there for the other actors as much as I can.
And Emily, you're appearing on the TV on the Showtime project Rust, based on American Rust, a Pulitzer Prize winner opposite Maura Tierney and Jeff Daniels. I mean, your career as well, it's just exploding. You guys are just so complimentary of each other. Can you talk about Rust and your excitement in that project?
Absolutely. I mean, so, you know, I can't remember what year the book was written, but it's a terrific book. It's looking at something I think that's really important to look at right now. I'm in 3 or 4 episodes of it. All of my scenes are with Maura Tierney, who is a force of nature. And it is not an exaggeration to say it's a dream come true to get to do any acting with her at all. And of course, Jeff Daniels. And I don't have any scenes with him, but, you know, when you're an actor, I mean, like I've been, you know, I've been around for a long time, and to get to even step up, you know, be in the same arena or the court with these people that you've looked up to for years and years and years and get to play, you know, really exciting. We started shooting in March, and the scene that I shot was the first one of the series that was shot after the pandemic had started. So there was a moment before anyone was vaccinated. They were testing us like crazy. It was an amazing experience, but I have to tell you, there was a moment where we all took a breath. All the actors took their masks off. And we're like, okay, here we are all together unmasked, and here we go. You know, so it was an incredible experience in a lot of ways. They kept us safe. I think the show is going to be terrific. People should check out the trailer.
Absolutely.
It blows my mind, and I watch them made it, you know. So
Well, let me ask you both. I'll start with you, Emily. Is there a dream actor or actress that you say, you know what, if I could have anybody out there that I haven't worked with that I want to work with, this may be the 1 or 2 out there that I really, really would like the opportunity to work with?
that list is so long for me. But the first 2 people that came to my mind when you, oh my gosh, this is so weird. But I would say the English actor Ben Whishaw.
Okay.
And I would say Jean Smart. Who just kind of had an amazing run doing The Incredible Mayor of Easttown, and now she's on a show called Slacks, right? Hacks, excuse me, Hacks.
Slacks is about my pants. That's a different show.
Slacks is a whole different thing.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the show about my pants that we're trying to get up to.
Yeah,
Slacks.
that's right. Forgive me, but I would say, you know, those are 2. But I mean, honestly, I have a list of probably 100 people. I think I adore. I'm a great fan.
Okay.
And I love fanning out. Michael can attest to this. Like, if I love a show, I watch all of it. I go on the blogs. I'm on Reddit. I'm talking about, you know, yeah. And I would like to work with this guy. We've never worked together, so I would put him on.
That. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Michael, you now, who would be your top 2 or 3?
Emily Donahoe is right at the top of the list, Jamie.
Oh, there you go.
In fact, she's like the first 5 people I'd want to work with.
There you go.
And I like Ben Whishaw. I like your Ben Whishaw. I think he's kind of a genius, really. I'd have to think for a second, you know, mainly because I'm so old, you know, I'm thinking about like Gary Cooper, and that's just not going to happen no matter what. Julia Binoche.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Well, you know, we watched the other day, Unbearable Lightness of Being, and I've actually been meaning to call Phil Kaufman, the director, because that's a film he made in 1988, and you know, Daniel Day-Lewis was just kind of getting started in his groove as an actor, and Juliette Binoche and Lena Olin, this Swedish actress, had this amazing scene together where Juliette Binoche wants to get started as a photographer, and it's been suggested that she photographs someone naked, and Lena Olin consents, and so they have this incredibly erotic scene that goes on for really probably a good 5 or 6 minutes of the movie, and there's very little dialogue. It's just the 2 of them interacting, and it was shot by the great cinematographer Sven Nykvist, who was Bergman's cinematographer. And the combination of all of it was so enticing. And Emily was watching it because I think she wanted to kind of get familiar with a good film that uses a political uprising as a backdrop for one of the inciting incidents of the story to happen. And of course, it was about the occupation of Czechoslovakia in the 60s, right? Wasn't that what it was about? So those two women, I mean, those were incredible performances, and I'd be happy to work with them as long as Emily wasn't on the set and wasn't anywhere near, because she'd be watching me kind of be a little gaga over.
Who wouldn't be? I mean, they're amazing.
They're
The Sports Love Life Show is brought to you by Mission Belts. No holes, always fits. Isn't it time you join the mission?
You're not in LA, you're not in Hollywood in terms of all the trappings. You're in a New York area, and you choose to do that. Of course, you're close to the city as far as getting there and back, but as far as, that in that Hollywood bubble, if you will, you're not there. Why did you choose to live outside of that? And you still get the roles, you still get your life, but it seems like you are opting for the more quiet, more family atmosphere, maybe that both of you grew up in, than being in that blender that is Hollywood.
Well, I think for us, we both always thought of ourselves as New York actors, and that's a kind of thing which, basically means we want to do theater. We want to have the theater in our life. We want to be able to go to the theater, and so being close to New York was an imperative for us. And there's this thing we do now called self-taping, where when you're auditioning for movies, if directors or casting directors want you to read for a part, I think it's better to go in the room and meet them. But the way the business has gone, we get to kind of record at home on our phones and spend a half an hour doing the audition and send it out. And then you wait for the thing that's yours to come yours. And so, that all sorts of falls into place, and I guess about 50% of my work is from auditions, and 50% is just kind of comes to me and I get an offer. And then another 50% I long for because I want 150%. I just didn't want 100%. So, I mean, it just kind of all falls into place, and not to be too kind of like frou-frou or kind of, sometimes what I call hippie bullshit about things. But, the feng shui of our place, that sense of the energy that you get from your home, that sense of the way the land meets your home, the way the land is situated, the views that we have, the way energy kind of comes to us, and we're able to kind of work our day out on a daily basis. Things like that are really crucial. If you're living in a place that you love and you feel connected to it, I think that actually helps, and it helps everything, including your career. I know when we first saw this, the first day, that is to say our house, the first day we walked into this house, Emily walked into the living room, which is right behind us, and she just looked around. She said, "I love this." And we kind of knew we were in a place that we loved almost instantly. And so that was a big deciding factor for us to live here.
I think too, I mean, I would add to that, Michael, I think mentioned I'm from rural Louisiana. And, I had a really positive experience in so many ways growing up there. I feel like one of the gifts I got from my family and my community there was a vision for a more expansive life. And so I feel very grateful that they helped me do that, but I miss some parts of it so much. And I would say that I most especially miss, or at least what I missed living in New York City, was the connection to outside. And I'm no great outdoorsman, but I do. There was something about small town life that I got so much out of it, especially as a young child, and I wanted to give that sense of security and family and community that I've been the beneficiary of. I wanted to find a way to recreate that for our son, but also be close enough to the city. We still had to be realistic about who we actually are and what we like to do, so we have this great kind of country thing going on, and if we start to get antsy, 2 hours later we're in a museum or at a play, or you know,
Okay.
so we feel like we've got the best of both worlds, really. You know.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you both, as far as the audition stuff, do you still have to audition? Is it a necessary evil? It's one of those things where you say, wait a minute, I've done this, why do I have to keep doing this? Or do you just take it as part of the business itself? Or is it something that you don't mind doing, or do you mind it?
It's just part of it. It's like anything else, you know, if you, each job is unique to itself, and they each have a way that they want to cast the piece. And, you know, if you have to audition, if you feel strongly about the job, great. You know, and then you just do that, and you try to kind of put it out of your head and move on.
Emily, do you feel the same as far as audition?
Yeah, same. I'd say it's probably about 50-50 for me too. 50% offer, 50% audition. And you know, no, I still feel really lucky anytime anybody asks me to go anywhere, pretty much. I'm like, you know, yeah, let's try.
Let's talk about the exciting new project you have. I know you've got so much going on. You wrote it, you produced it. Can you speak about it and let us know more how we're going to be able to watch this? It sounds so exciting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, it's actually, I think a lot of actors and writers and directors probably did something similar during the pandemic. But when everything shut down, I started to get really antsy. I think we both did, to find something creative and fun to do. And so, like many people, I had a bunch of scripts in a drawer that I had written over the past 15 or 20 years. And I started going through and essentially doing a feasibility analysis of like, what could we feasibly shoot, you know? And I wrote this film actually as a feature, I think on the subway in 2008, going to and from the city. I wrote it on the subway. And when Michael and I first we're getting to know each other, before we started dating and we were friends, I was kind of putting some finishing touches on it. And I was like, would you ever consider doing the script? You know, I knew it was like a pretty big ask to get somebody like Michael to do it. And he read it and he was like, yeah, I would do it. I said, great, that would be awesome. And then life took us a totally different direction, and we fell in love and got married and had a kid, and our work lives went somewhere different as well. And then, you know, during this past year, there was an opportunity to return to that. And I pulled it out and I was like, what do you think? Could we make this? And we made it into a short. We turned it down into a short, and we got together some incredible people, the filmmaker Jeremiah Kipp, Melissa Leo, and Linda Powell, and Danielle Scrotstad, our friend, and a wonderful actor named Eric Lochtefeld, who was in Broadway's King Kong, who I worked with many times before. We kind of got together.
So KEEFE, I believe, has a part in there too.
The Sports Love Life Show is brought to you by Cremo and their fine line of skin creams, body washes, colognes, beard products, shave creams, and more. Cremo, astonishingly superior.
Who, this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the main guy. He's the main guy. Yeah, so I asked him to do it, 14 years ago, and he said yes, and then he said yes again in 2020. So I feel really lucky. And it's about, essentially a firefighter that comes to his house in upstate New York, only to discover that he's not alone there. And so that's all I'll say for now. It's a short film. We're in post-production, and I'm not quite sure yet how you can see it, but we're about to start, the whole festival thing, which is what you do with a short film. You start submitting it to festivals and seeing where it goes. So stay tuned.
Absolutely.
And I can also speak to, Emily's too modest to say that, she wrote this really poetic, fascinating, oblique insight into the life of a firefighter. And I'll tell you, two guys that I sent the script to, because I wanted them to kind of weigh in for me as an actor so that I could understand it. And one's Robert Burke, who was on Law and Order SVU for years opposite Mariska Hargitay, who was a firefighter in New York. And the other is Steve Buscemi, who is also a firefighter in New York. And both of them got back to me immediately. And they were in love with this screenplay. And then they both ended up contributing to the completion funds of the film to ensure that we got the editing done that we needed to get done. So I think that speaks volumes about Emily's capacity as a writer and her insight, because for those two guys to respond the way they didn't have to do that, and they certainly didn't do it out of any loyalty to me. They did it because they were moved by the story, as I was, and as were all the actors and the director and the crew that got involved. And so I really have high hopes for it.
Cool.
Everybody,
Two people, huh?
absolutely.
Lovely thing to do, right?
Absolutely. What is it important in everybody wants to win awards. Like Michael, you've been nominated for an Academy Award as a supporting actor. When you look at what is out there in terms of these big awards, everybody would love to earn one for an acting or writing type situation. Does that drive either one of you, or is it one of those things that you say, you know what, if it happens, it's great, but it's not the end all be all for me? How do you handle the award aspect of it? So many people want that and have to have it. Is it something that you just want to go do good work? What's your thoughts?
I think you could drive yourself crazy. You know, one of the things we talk about in acting is you don't want to be result oriented. You don't want to play the result of where you're heading in the scene. You want to play the process. And, you know, awards are great, you know, and I've been fortunate in my life to be nominated once or twice for them. And I have to tell you that, you know, they can really help generate a lot of interest in your career because it brings you to the awareness of the people in the business and outside of the business, but they can also be an intense distraction. And so I think as an artist, I try not to think about them too much. You know, as far as I'm concerned, the real reward for me is, you know, I got to marry Emily and we have an 8-year-old son, and that's more than I ever hoped for. And, you know, I'm really grateful.
We've got a few minutes left. Your 8-year-old son, Aiden, as Emily said earlier, was about your age when you did Danny Noonan in the.
Well, he's a little bit younger than I was when I did Danny Noonan.
Okay, younger than you were. Okay,
just a tad.
Just a tad. But would you want Aiden at some point to go in acting if he gets the acting bug through you, or is it something you guys would rather say, I'd rather do something else?
You know, I don't care what he does as long as he's rich and he can take care of me in my old age.
Okay. Good answer. Good answer. Now, Emily, do you golf at all? You tried to golf at all?
No, I mean, the closest I've ever come to is I played field hockey, which so I have chased around a ball on the ground with a stick, but no, but I can drive a golf cart. So I feel like
there you go.
I have a place on the court on the golf course, and I'm happy to be that person.
But you know, because you had that field hockey experience, you could have a kind of Happy Gilmore thing. You know about Happy Gilmore's background as a professional hockey player before he became a golfer?
Oh, no, really?
That's another golf movie you should watch sometime.
I was also a terrible field hockey player. I was a decent lacrosse player, but I was not a good field hockey
lacrosse is not going to help. Field hockey would help, though.
So, Michael, when you play golf, how many people say Noonan when you're putting? Or because I know it happens to me, and I had nothing to do with the movie, but I get it from my buddies all the time. So I just wonder how the man himself gets it when he's playing.
You know, I was just down in Yardley, Pennsylvania for a really wonderful foundation called Caden's Corner. This is a law they're trying to get in place for addressing certain issues in custody and family court. And this poor young girl was killed by her father because the court ignored the mental health recommendations and allowed the father these visitation rights. And it was a terrible tragedy that took place, but the family is so resilient and they were able to put together this foundation. And it was the 3rd year of their golf tournament to raise money for the foundation down in Pennsylvania. And so I went down, and Chris McDonald, who you'll remember as Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore, which we're going to turn Emily on to later tonight. I'll have a Happy Gilmore screening for her. And he and I went to this golf outing, and we sat on the 11th green, and as the players approached, we joined their round. It was a shotgun format, and so these guys would come up in a foursome, and we said to them, look, we're here to help, and we're going to sink a few putts for you, hopefully, and if we don't sink any putts, then at least you'll get the read. And I can't tell you how many times the Noonan thing came up even now. It's 41 years later. So I'm pretty sure that when I died, you know, the obit for my obituary in the newspaper is going to, the opening sentence will probably be Danny Noonan is dead, and then on my tombstone it'll probably just say Noonan ... miss it ! I think is what's going to be my epitaph.
Or he's in the hole.
Oh, nice.
How about that?
That's it.
Nice.
That's it right there.
I just wrote that down, by the way, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should.
Lightning round real quick. Who is the most romantic?
Michael.
Me, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Best dancer?
Me.
Emily, yeah.
The best singer?
Me.
Okay.
Now, I saw some lyrics, I played it. Was that you on background vocals, Michael?
What did you play?
It was a Bonnie Raitt song. It said lyrics by you, and it said.
No, I'll tell you my singing story. I'm a decent singer. I'm not any good. But when I wrote,
Wait a minute. I'm a decent singer. I'm not any good.
Anybody who's a singer will know exactly what I'm talking
Okay.
about.
Okay.
So when I wrote that song with Bonnie and we were recording it, they had a recording studio they called the Chomsky Ranch. It was named after Noam Chomsky, and it was a house on Mulholland Drive in LA. And the only piece of art was a portrait of Noam Chomsky above the fireplace. So I went in there, and Bonnie's producer, was there, and they wanted me to sing scratch track on the vocal so that we had the harmony. So I jumped in the booth and I sang the harmony. Bonnie gave me a high five. Cut to like 2 months later, we're in New York, and Bonnie's getting a real singer to sing the harmony. And that would have been Levon Helm, who was one of the best American singers ever, and a drummer for the band, who I'm sure your audience will remember them. So we're in a studio in New York, and the record's just about finished, except for Levon's harmony part. And Levon and Bonnie are trying to work it out, and Bonnie's singing the harmony part for Levon to kind of catch, but she sings in a kind of low alto, but it's an octave higher than Levon could sing, and he couldn't quite get there. And so Don, Bonnie's producer, turns to me and says, "Michael, please teach Levon the harmony part." And I was like, "Absolutely, but first I have to go call my mom and tell her that I am going to teach Levon Helm how to sing." So, Emily's a great singer. I'm a decent singer.
I'm not a great, I'm just a better singer than Michael.
But she's a classically trained pianist, so she's a real musician.
That's not what he is.
Who's the most stubborn?
Who's what?
Most stubborn.
Michael.
That's bullshit.
It's true.
The best cook?
Michael.
Emily, no, really?
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, we're okay in the kitchen. We get it done.
Cooking's not our thing.
As Loudon Wainwright once said, I make a mean cuisine, so
Okay.
I eat out.
Who said I love you first?
Michael.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. And before I let you go, 10 years together, can you give our viewers and listeners your secrets, each one of you, to how your 10 years has been so successful and your best advice?
I don't have any secrets for anybody. And my advice is don't take advice from unemployed actors.
No, that's a really good question. I mean, I will say, I don't know. Communication, I guess, is everything.
What?
I don't know. All I know is this. When Michael asked me to marry him, I was like, yes. And I never got nervous getting married. I never looked back. I mean, it was just like, yes, yes, every day. Yes, yes, Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, final question before I let you go. Through this pandemic over the last year and a half to 2 years, we've been going through all this. Can you give us some thoughts and perspective from both of you as far as how you survived through it? Have you kept your excitement for your work, for your craft, and for your family in these times that have been down for so many people with the loss of life and the frustrations and the ups and downs? Can you each give us your perspective and maybe some advice on how we can get through these tough times?
I found like the thing that helped, the two things that helped me the most during this horrible, horrible time has been structure, but also reaching out to family and friends, because I feel like for me, the hardest thing, and I'm curious what Michael's answer to this is going to be, but, was the isolation. And so for me and for our 8-year-old, trying to find ways to stay connected to others, in community with others, and find even tiny ways to try to be of service. Right. They were very tiny, but even a little bit seemed to go a long way in terms of keeping us, I guess, human.
Right.
How about you?
It was a profound time for all of us, and I certainly don't think I have any more insight into the experience than anybody else, because we all had to do it. And we all had to survive, and we all had to find a way, and we all did. And those of us that didn't, it was a tragic way to kind of wake up to what's happening in the world, that we all had to suffer so much, that 600,000 Americans had to die. I'm not certain all those people had to die.
They didn't.
But the way that we learn from these things, as I think is going to speak to us as a culture, what do we do now? How do we go forward? How do we bridge the gaps that we find in society? How do we reach out to each other, even though we may have differing views? And that's the probably the most important thing for me, is to establish bridges of communication between people, so that we can have differing opinions, but on certain things we have to come together, and we have to see our way to leave a world behind. As the Native Americans say, they think 7 generations ahead before they do anything that's going to affect their culture.
Right.
And certainly they know more about survival than Emily and I can speak to.
Right.
They've survived an inordinate amount of oppression, loss of land, loss of culture, and they're resilient, they're defiant, they're happy in the face of all of it. They still sing and dance. Some of my best friends are from the indigenous world, and I take a real lesson from them about survival. And I think we all can.
Thank you both so much, Emily and Michael. This has been absolutely an honor for me. 2 great actors. I tell you what, under one roof, all that talent, the writing and the singing and the acting, is there anything you can't do? I don't think so. Pretty much everything.
Thank you so much for saying that. And when you mentioned the one roof, the only thing I was thinking is we have to renovate and build out, so there's more room for our talent.
There you go. So much. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for being part of Sports Love and Life and giving us all this insight. And it was so much fun having you guys. We'd love to have you back sometime in the future.
Thanks,
Thank
Jamie.
you so much. It was a blast. Really,
Thank you, Emily, Michael, O'Keefe. We'll be right back after these messages.
The Sports Love Life Show is brought to you by Dr. Paul Ross and his amazing foot cream. Amazing doctor, amazing cream. Give your feet the very best with Dr. Ross's amazing foot cream.